Coming up in the next segment, when I have time, report Obama threatened Putin with war over election hacking conspiracy theory. President used emergency red phone system to say armed conflict could ensue. Yeah, that's the word out of ambassadors and others. Hillary obviously has talked about the fact that we needed the policy a year ago, which is now the policy of NATO and the U.S., and if they claim there's an attack via cyber attack from the continent of Eurasia, basically, or anywhere in Russian territory, that they are then going to launch a military attack on Russia. You cannot make this level of crap up. In fact, in the next segment, will you guys also just pull up the articles about new U.S. policy to cyber attack includes military attack on Russia? Because I want to show that to people, because I believe me, it doesn't sound real. I get it. It sounds like a lie. Just like, oh, I've got like 15 or more different MTV videos that actually say whites are inherently bad, the world will be good when they're all gone. We're just people that have less skin pigment from Northern Europe. I mean, it's crazy. And technically, I'm a Mongol because I'm part Native American. But the whole point is so what? This is all craziness, ladies and gentlemen. This is craziness. But they're the ones pushing it because they co-opted the whole libertarian Republican movement to end segregation and all of it in the 60s. The party of the KKK did. But let's get to this big news right now. Paul Krugman, who is wrong almost all the time because he's a disinfo operative, I haven't decided if he is like a total idiot with like a 75 IQ or if it's like some type of like secret comedy he's involved in, because the U.S. economy conference announcement, the U.S. economy when it comes to confidence surges to the highest level that Gallup has ever recorded. Gallup's U.S. Economic Confidence Index has never been higher than it is today, ever. They're calling it Trump euphoria. Now, how does Krugman respond to this? Krugman comes out in the New York Times and says, to join Trump administration, you have to be a white nationalist and a conspiracy theorist. So question known liars and be white, which isn't even true. He goes on to attack the economics that Trump is talking about, trying to have infrastructure spending increase with tax incentives to states, counties, and cities and individuals for infrastructure and for federal funding of infrastructure when our infrastructure is falling apart, despite the fact Krugman has called for this before, because that's just basic Keynesian economics. So he's now going back on what he claims he's an economic follower of. But forget that. Guess what he said in the New York Times in 1998? You cannot make this up. This is when dinosaur media was telling itself, don't worry, in an article about the internet, we're still going to be dominant. Remember back in the late 90s, the media was discussing would they be made obsolete, which has now happened? This is at Paul Krugman. The growth of the internet will slow drastically as the flaw in the law, McAfee's law, which states that the number of potential connections in a network is proportional to the square of the number of participants, because apparent most people have nothing to say to each other. By 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machine. Now, he made that sound real scientific and real smart, like an economist would, who's giving you a false system. But has the internet gotten bigger or smaller? It's gotten tens of thousands of times logarithmically, exponentially bigger. And they say it's only going to get bigger as it ties into the Internet of Things exponentially as well by the very architecture of how the internet was built. And by the early 1990s, all the big tech giants had already envisioned the current system we're under. But Krugman writes a piece of trash a couple times a week, sits around getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and thinks he's a rocket scientist. Now, this is almost as bad as people saying that Al Gore invented the internet because in the 1990s, he presided over some federal infrastructure agreements. The internet was invented by the United States and England and DARPA in the 1960s. My father, in Plan 2 in high school, in the mid-1960s, was introduced to the internet, to CD-ROM, to all of it, that supposedly didn't exist for decades. So let me just tell you, We're not in Kansas anymore. They've got some incredibly advanced stuff. But people like Krugman are so delusional, they're not even, I guess, aware of it. In fact, when we come back, it's in my stack. I didn't get into this yesterday. I want to talk about how they're invading our homes with AI robot systems hiding in plain view. I'm going to dig that out and cover that as well. But first, when we come back, I'm going to get into some of the other big news that I was mentioning and covering here at the beginning of the segment. We're also going to open the phones up and take your calls ahead of guests in the third hour. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You gonna sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you gonna be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.